morning and welcome again to the latest episode of Brand Designs, our podcast and video series that is basically set up for founders to understand and learn a little bit more from other founders across the industry in the world of retail and e-commerce. So today I'm joined as usual by Nathan Lomax, but also from Melvin J from Gunna Drinks. So good morning, gentlemen. How are you? How are you both?
Good, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, very well,
Nathan,
thank you,
well?
Melvin. Yeah, very well, thanks, guys. Lovely to see you, Melvin. Thanks for joining us, and good to see you as always, James.
Fantastic. So I suppose our usual start, Melvin, is really in this kind of scenario in terms of what made Gunna Drinks what it is today, and tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of involvement with the business as kind of current CEO.
Yeah. Just to set context, we sort of define ourselves as a craft soft drinks, and actually our inspiration was craft beer. So what we're trying to do in soft drinks is actually very, very similar to what the craft beer guys have done. They had a different enemy or a different monster to us. They were trying to take on bland corporate lager. So you can remember the supermarket with like 7 miles long of identical looking and tasting lager brands, basically competing on price. And the craft beer guys have done an astounding job, bearing in mind particularly that a lot of people and investors laughed at them in the beginning. They've done an astounding job of kind of taking on that monster and slaying it with beer brands that are packed full of flavour and personality. And what we're trying to do is literally the same, but in soft drinks. So our monster or enemy is slightly different. We're kind of fighting the corporate bilge of soft drinks, which are very bland tasting drinks. I mean, they're deliberately bland because bland equals ubiquitous equals volume. So they're bland in taste. Their personalities through probably 1,000 rounds of brand positioning products have basically been dialed down to the blandest, most uninteresting brand personality that works across the globe. So they have bland in flavour, bland in personality. And one sort of key difference for us in soft drinks, those products were kind of packed full of, dodgy ingredients. So you could say our enemy is very simple. It's corporate bilge water packed full with dodgy ingredients. So that's a fairly nice enemy to attack. And really our inspiration was from craft beer to kind of take on the kind of big corporates with a product which has an amazing characterful and complex flavor profile and that's packed full of personality and doesn't have all of the negative nasty ingredients in it. So that's really, if you like, who we are and why we did it. We just could see that there was just a better way to build the soft drinks market for particularly younger Gen Z and millennial consumers.
You're really trying to tick the three kind of key boxes at the moment, aren't you, in terms of that less sugar, that kind of the no artificial element, and also a slightly more distinct taste profile, as you said. There are people there that don't want
we always
something
emphasize
something kind of.
Yeah. So if somebody says to me, "What are you about?"
Yeah.
Really, we're about flavour, or we say character. So character means flavour, but it also means personality. That's what the brand is about. We are better in terms of ingredients, but actually, if you talk to consumers about what they care about, the naturalness element of the opportunity kind of falls much lower down. They kind of know that the corporate brands have some ingredients in there which are imperfect, but they're still drinking them. They're still buying 18 billion pounds worth of them, so they're not so worried about that. What they really, I think, feel, particularly people like me that are cutting down on alcohol, is there's just a dearth of really nice tasting, characterful, complex, interesting flavors in the soft drinks market.
Melvin, I've got a question here around your growth journey. It seems to have been a remarkable one in the last 5 years, but a lot of kind of brands listening into this will be thinking, or owner founders certainly will be thinking, okay, that wouldn't have come without its hurdles or challenges. Obviously, we've had the COVID in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. What's been the biggest challenge on your growth journey to date, and how have you gone about overcoming it?
Yeah, so I remember speaking to an army captain from the Rifles who served in Afghanistan, and about his business, the business of war. And I said to him, so kind of what do you focus on? He said, well, we focus on our weaknesses. He said, because in our business, our weaknesses get us killed, which is kind of like an interesting thing to say. I thought that it'd be kind of more kind of gung-ho, British Army, we're the finest people on the planet when it comes to the war game. But actually, they're really, really focused on the weaknesses. And actually, I think that we've learned to understand that it's a strength to look in the mirror and understand your weaknesses. And where we were weak going into this was our understanding of just how complex and difficult to navigate the trade structure and route to market was. And that's because in soft drinks, pretty much every single outlet that sells stuff, even clothes retailers, sell drinks. So it's an incredible market. There are at least 500,000 places in the UK that sell soft drinks, including TK Maxx, which is not a food and drink retailer as far as I'm aware. So getting an understanding of how the distribution channels work is really, really a big challenge for us. And we got it wrong. And then working out which bits of that gigantic sort of jigsaw puzzle you have a reasonable chance of competing in and winning in is also very difficult. So I think, to answer your question, the single biggest challenge for us was to develop a kind of coherent sales and distribution strategy, and to work out in kind of military language where to focus and how to win.
Robin, why did you go to military as your kind of point of reference? Because it's a really interesting one. I think there's so many lessons that owner founders can learn from those that have been in the military. But what in particular struck you about this person in the military that made you want to reach out to them?
I think just the kind of sheer sort of honesty about what their business and it's terrible to call it a business, what their job entailed. And when you speak to founders, a lot of founders are like me. They're like, yeah, hey, gung ho, we're going to conquer the world, we're going to battle these corporate brands, and we're going to create all this value for our shareholders, and our product is perfect, and we're perfect, and everybody loves us. And that you can kind of quickly get into the kind of habit of smoking your own dope, and that makes you blind to the things that are going to kill you. So I think I tend to gravitate towards people who are kind of quite pragmatic, slightly cynical, not cynical destructive, but kind of cynical, more in kind of like a critical way of thinking that acknowledges strengths and weaknesses as equally important in the success of a business, whether it be a startup or a big corporate.
I must say it's so refreshing to hear that coming from an owner founder, because I think many brands that we've spoken to over the years in my kind of 25, 30 years in retail, it's so many people are a believer of their own hype. Not just on an individual level, but of the brand. It's that classic, taste our product, is it amazing? And it's friends and family you're asking. Of course you're going to get a really positive response. It's a focus group of one. So it is that constant reflection of there is always someone out there that is able to give you some really credible directional advice that can help you get there faster. It's whether you as a business are comfortable and happy to receive it and reflect on it, I suppose. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't be defensive. You have a constant stream of feedback. We're live on Cedars now. There are 560 investors, and I've invited them to talk to me and to give me feedback, and they have. And guess what? They're not saying just how wonderful we are. They're saying, why do you have all of this plastic in the boxes that you're sending from your online shop? What are you doing about denting of cans? They can be pretty brutal, and you've got two ways of dealing with that. One is to take it on the chin accept it as valid feedback and do something about it if they're right. But also not to ignore them if you think they're wrong, because you might discover later on that they were right, and you can't rule it out. And I think with all successful founders, they're on the border of delusional, but it's important that you stay on the border. As soon as you cross over into like fully delusional, then you're literally seconds from extinction. And it's a fine line. If you don't have that optimism and that positivity and that belief and that vision, you can't do the job. But if that becomes addictive and you're only doing that, then you will lose out. You'll miss opportunities and eventually you'll go bust.
Melvin, one thing we talk a lot about is around mindset and resilience. And actually, as an owner founder, that's something that often is needed in spades, in terms of those that it's very difficult to hear people calling your own baby ugly. And quite often you would have spent hours and hours and months and years crafting something for then somebody to come in with an opinion to say, this doesn't work, or that doesn't look right, or that doesn't look right. As an owner founder yourself, how have you gone about that journey of, like you just said there, you've been quite receptive to feedback, but are there times where you have had to kind of put on the big boy pants and think, you know what, no, I've got faith in what I'm doing. I'm not going to go down this route. I'm not just going to listen to everyone, because we see so many owner founders get so many cooks in that actually before long they don't know what way to turn. They're like, well, that person said I should do this. That person said I should do this. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah. But I think every founder, every business has to have some things which are not negotiable. So for us, this idea of characterful flavor is non-negotiable. So we do get hit with a little bit of criticism because there's a teeny weeny bit of sweetener in our product. But the reason it's there is because we can't give you a product which is only 73 calories, half the sugar, and deliver good taste without it. So we do get criticism about that, but we know the majority of the people who are out there are not really concerned about that. They consume a lot of sweeteners. So it's about knowing what the negotiables are, where you think there is room for improvement, or where you think feedback is most valuable, but also being firm on what you stand for. And it was Dylan that said, a man's got to stand for something. And I think every business and every brand has to have something that they stand for. And it doesn't mean they can't take feedback on it, but they need to be pretty careful not to zigzag on those sort of topics. Whereas there's some other topics where there's plenty of room for zig and there's plenty of room for zag before you decide on your direction. And I think that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of stick to our guns on the stuff that we genuinely believe we're absolutely right on and will be important in the long run, but kind of stay open to a little bit of feedback or challenge on other issues, and never ever assume that right now is right tomorrow. It could really be that a piece of feedback which is complete and utter bullshit, completely wrong now, actually turns out to be a really important and valuable insight, and something you need to think about in the future. So even the stuff you don't agree with does have currency or could lose currency. So you just have to be aware of that reality, that the world changes very quickly. So we would have said a year ago, nobody's going to buy 48 cans of a brand that they've never heard of from an online store. So why are you all bleating about us not being very big in e-commerce? Guess what? We were wrong. And actually, we fixed that, and we've got a tremendous e-commerce business now. But boy, do I wish we'd listened to the people that said, get your e-commerce business in before we had a global pandemic. That would have been the time to fix that problem, not during a global pandemic. So you just can't afford to ignore any feedback. See it all as a gift. Put it in the gift for now, gift for later, not relevant pile, whatever pile you want to put it in, but don't ignore it or forget it, because you should maybe come back to it.
It's the bit we constantly talk about. 90% of our clients are pure ecom clients, or kind of bricks and clicks in many ways. So we constantly talk about that listen, learn, and act mentality.
Yeah.
But we hate the phrase pivot, because actually, what I can see from you're listening and learning, but you're still staying absolutely core to your business and your product values. You're not going to change your product overnight just because two people say it's not the direction they want to see it.
We will never launch a product that doesn't come top of the table in blind taste scores. never. So, and if somebody gives us feedback and we think it's going to push us further up to the top of the taste test table, we're all ears, because we believe that that's really, the essence of food and drink. It's about your product. At the end of the day, you can give the product away and get trial very easily, very cheaply. There's only one way to buy repeat purchase, and that's by having a bloody good product at a reasonable price. That's the only way you can buy repeat, and repeat is the only way that you can build a really successful and sustainable food and beverage company.
Well, when you talked earlier about reaching out to the military for your source of inspiration, have there been other business owners, founders, consultants, mentors, etc., to give you that inspiration along this journey?
Yeah, not so many. I mean, I talk to people all the time. I'm always kind of, trying to pick up sort of tips and learnings. I think we're big admirers of Brewdog and what they've done and how they've done that. So we kind of do listen to James Watt, and what Brewdog is saying and what they're doing. I'd say call it inspiration. Yeah, probably is in a way, inspiration learning. They've done an incredible job. Remember they were laughed off the Dragon's Den. That a lot of people don't know that, but we were recently asked whether we wanted to go on, and we kind of reflected on the learning of Brewdog. People just didn't believe that they could do it, and all through their history, people have doubted that they could do it. They said going to the US was wrong, and they're, I think, the second biggest craft beer company, or the fastest growing craft beer company there. So I think we are looking at those sort of companies that are analogous to what we're trying to do for inspiration and for ideas. But also, we're a relatively small but quite senior management team. We get a heck of a lot of inspiration from ourselves, from each other, as well. Because we're all in the sort of same kind of critical listening, sort of open mindset. I think we're all picking up stuff from other people and other industries, and we're kind of good at sort of sharing what other people are thinking, what other people are doing.
So is there a co-founder mix? Is it just yourself as founder and the others just senior management team, or there's other founders in the business as well?
No, there's three co-founders. Chris Prouting, whose background is in sales and sales and commercial strategy, and he came in a little bit later, but he sort of transformed the way we look at the distribution channels that we focus on and how we kind of go to market. And then Bella is the inspiration behind the kind of marketing of the brand. So yeah, it's a relatively small team because we have an outsourcing mindset. So our manufacturing is outsourced, our accounting is outsourced, our logistics is outsourced. Anything that we think is not essential to the vision and the growth sits outside of our payroll and therefore outside of our overhead structure. Anything which we define as being operational or support is a variable cost in our business. So we've got a very relevant founder team in terms of the brand building and company building activities that we want to achieve.
I'd love to just pick up on that and dive a little bit deeper, because so many owner founders will look to do everything themselves and will not outsource anything, right? Because they just want to maintain control and can't let go. And it's really interesting to think that actually you guys have come at it from a slightly different angle to say, anything that sits out of our wheelhouse here, we'll just outsource. Why did you take that route as opposed to the more traditional route, which is we'll just try and do everything?
Capital to build the business initially. You think about it, if you hire 7 or 8 people from day one, you've got a huge overhead, and you probably don't need most of those people full time. So I could go out and hire pretty good average to middle quality logistics person, but I don't have the whole job for them. So why would I add that overhead, because it's a fixed cost in the short term, a salary bill, when I can actually go to a third-party logistics supplier and have one of the best in the country, but only pay them for the week that I need them or the day that I need them. So it's a question of getting better skills at a lower or more flexible business structure. And that means you need to raise less capital. And it means that the capital you do raise is focused on stuff which creates value, rather than stuff that kind of, sort of maintains value. So we see very much there's a difference between, putting in beautiful lighting and keeping lighting on. And we're really focused on the stuff which is about creating the beautiful lighting. Somebody else can worry about whether the bulbs need changing or whether, our circuit board needs to be updated. They're going to be better at that. And also then, inevitably, if you have all those people in the business and they're all sitting around the table every day, you're going to spend a lot of time talking about logistics. How to get from A to B. You're going to, if you're a nice person, you're not going to say to the lady or the guy in charge of logistics, shut up. You're not in the value creation team. You're going to sit around the table and they're going to have lots of problems and lots of issues they're going to bring you, and they're going to distract you. When you outsource it, you kind of outsource the cost of it, but also a lot of the distraction of it. So you tend only to get involved because there's a really big issue that they can't fix. Because you're not sitting around the table with them every day, they don't come along with it and tell you about every little thing that's going on in their day. So it's not to be dismissive at all. We don't want to sit in a dark room that doesn't have the lights on, but we do want to be ensuring that the time we spend and the time we spend together is really creating value, long-term value for the shareholders, and is managing our capital, the money we raise, to focus on the things that are going to create growth rather than the things that are kind of maintaining the growth.
And I suppose that investment in growth is all around customer acquisition, building consideration and awareness in the marketplace, for example. Is there a marketing initiative or channel that has really been pivotal in your rapid growth?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say digital advertising generally, but Facebook in particular has been really big for us, particularly as we sort of move towards a bigger focus on online as a way of kind of building our business. I think we kind of got to this quite late, so we've done a lot of really nice sort of digital work in Facebook, in social. By Facebook, I mean advertising, as well as in social, building our followership on Instagram, doing really nice posts, beautiful photography, all that kind of stuff. And that has helped build the brand awareness. But actually, it's very unaccountable money. It's sort of wetsuit, peeing yourself in a wetsuit kind of money. It gives you a nice warm feeling, but sometimes it's only you that sort of knows you're doing it. So what we've done is we've changed our focus to being more about driving traffic to our online store, because we know that even when we don't get anyone to go to our online store, we still build awareness of the brand and engagement with the brand, which will help us in the offline retail environment as well. So I think it's not just about a channel, but it's actually about having a marketing strategy where you can see a return on investment, because I can see as I spend that money, more people are buying my brand from my shop. But even if they're not, I can see the brand awareness and brand engagement levels going up as well. So it's a win-win. Whereas before, I think we were spending so much on brand awareness and engagement type work, which we could never quantify. We were probably, not using the money as effectively as we are now.
So Melvin, you touched upon earlier the fact that you'd invested a lot into e-commerce into the last 12 to 18 months, as many retailers have due to the pandemic, etc. What are the big lessons you've taken from that? Because actually the site's looking fantastic. It sounds like it's performing okay. So for those retailers that are perhaps thinking, do I need to invest more in e-commerce or what do I do? What would you say to those people?
I think one of the biggest things that we've done is we've just made it incredibly simple for people to buy a box of 12 or a box of 24 mixed flavors. So we thought we'd be really clever like Brewdog and have this sort of mix and match concept where you can create your own box of the 4 or 5 different flavors that we stock. I like lemonade, so I'll have 6 of those. I'm not sure about, the ginger one. I'll have 2 of those. So we thought that was a good idea. But actually what it means is people spend a lot of time mucking around on your shop and leave without buying anything. So what we've actually done in the last year is we basically offered them 2 sort of ready-made mixed cases that they can literally buy with 2 clicks. So they click on the ad, it takes them to the shop, and it says, would you like a dirty dozen, which is a mixed case of all 4 flavors, or a full Monty, which is a bigger case, 24 cans of the 4 different flavors. So immediately they have something which is a great way to try all of the flavors, which is not too expensive and is bloody easy to click on and to buy. And that cuts down all of the kind of other distraction and the other movement around the shop. It kind of closes the deal from Facebook ad to online click to order click. You've got literally like a 30-second to 1 minute trail to spending 25 quid on us. And from there, then obviously we've got an order, we've got a customer, and we've got the opportunity to remarket to them through email marketing as well. So the simpler you make it for somebody to get hold of your product, it's not just about price anymore. The simpler you make it for them to transact with you, obviously the easier it is that they're gonna buy from you. And I think still a lot of people's online consumer journey, or the choices that they're offering, is making it too complex for them to do it. So they're dropping out halfway through the buying experience just because you're not giving them something very simple to click and buy.
So you're very much focused on that first sale as the gate. We call it the gateway drug. You know, it's the first thing that gets you into the brand. You're confident in your product because you love it and it's taste tested and it always comes up kind of top of the pile, as you said. It's on the podium. So you know that piece around you're willing to invest in the purchase of that first customer. Am I right in terms of you're willing to buy that first customer experience in many ways?
Absolutely. Our payback is a lifetime value payback. It's not a first purchase payback. So we lose money, although we can get our acquisition cost down. I think it's around 13. We think we probably get it down to 7, which would get us to quite close to break even on our first order. It's pretty hard to get better than break even on the first order for a product like ours. So it's the lifetime value of the customer, which leads to a payback on our online store, not the first purchase.
And Melvin, a lot of people
when the quality of the product becomes incredibly important as well, because somebody's not going to come back to your online store to buy another 24 of filter water.
There's a big trend in the kind of e-commerce space at the moment around subscription. Is that something that you've looked in as a module to drive that kind of recurring revenue going forwards and to get people purchasing time and time again?
Yeah, we're already doing that through Amazon, and we're looking to do it through our online store as well.
So
in terms of Amazon as a channel, have you looked at other other channels as well? Because again, a lot of brands that come to us and owner founders that come to us look at these other channels and are not really sure where to start. What made you choose Amazon as your kind of test bed before doing it on the website as opposed to the other way around?
I think just the scale of them as a soft drinks company, soft drinks retailer now. For soft drinks, there aren't that many, so there are lots of e-retailers focusing on alcoholic drink. Websites that have all the craft beers in the world on them, or all the different spirits brands that you wouldn't necessarily find, and they're doing really, really well. But they're not that bothered about or interested in soft drinks. It's sort of an add-on or a distraction. So we don't have the same breadth of e-tailer opportunity as a alcohol drink brand would have. Really, for us, it's Amazon, it's Ocado, and then it's a few other kind of more niche-y, smaller soft drinks e-tailers.
So from a lead time, wholesale obviously is a major part of what you do as well. Having gone into quite a number of different outlets, you're stocked in Holland and Barrett, and the amazing booths as a food retailer. That's almost the holy grail. Fortnum & Mason and kind of booths are in that kind of top tier kind of category. How have you found going into the wholesale market? Knocking on doors. How long has it kind of taken you to broker those first couple of deals?
In a way, that's kind of where we started and what we did. So, I mean, we've been knocking on doors, getting chucked out of places, having the door slammed in our face, being ignored for our whole lives. Basically, that is, the business development process for direct retailer, wholesaler is really just a game of resilience and attrition. Eventually, it might be email number 700 or telephone call number 900. Eventually, the buyer for that retail group will either tell you to off, or will say, yeah, hey, that looks interesting, send me some samples. But to get to the point where they tell you to bog off, or say, yes, I'll give you an address to send some samples in, is a game of attrition. And what we've actually done is we've kind of automated the attrition part of it. So we're using CRM software and automation through sequences to basically really do the kind of boring, can I just interrupt you for 5 minutes again, sort of follow-up kind of email. So we've spent a lot of money, a lot of time building a really good customer database. It's got just over 3,700 soft drink buyers in it, and we reckon that 3,700 probably covers 70% of every single soft drink buyer or shelf that's stocked by a multiple. So it deliberately, consciously doesn't include any of the independents. There are about 120,000 of those, 130,000 of those, and it just focuses on the ones that have got 5 or more doors. They're all in the database, and it's taken 4 years to get to that point where it covers the top people at Sainsbury's who are buying soft drinks, right down to a guy who runs a really cool 5-store coffee chain. So it's got that kind of breadth of multiple outlets in it. But it is the right people. And then we're using HubSpot, in our case, as a CRM tool and automation, basically to kind of automate the process of, one, making sure that we've got the right contact. So am I talking to the person who decides which soft drinks to put on the shelves for your organization? And then after that, all we're trying to do is get an address to send them some samples. Because pretty much as soon as they try the product, they pick up the phone and come back to us, and they either say, not now, or right now, because we love you.
Yeah. So dealing with that attrition piece is something we talk around with founders, because there's a couple of scenarios. In fact, you see it on Dragon's Den a lot, where they're saying, have you talked to any of the big multiples? No, I'm afraid to, or I don't have the contacts, and all this kind of stuff. It is that resilience piece is one quite hard to deal with on occasions if you haven't got that positive mental attitude. But also there is the other piece of the scarediness, if I can call it that in a very school book kind of way, the scarediness of jumping in and actually making some of those first calls.
Yeah. I mean, if you're scared of that, don't be an entrepreneur in the food and beverage space. If you don't like cold calling, find a new job or a different job, because at the very heart of what we're trying to do as startup is the notion of begging. We're begging people for money, we're begging people for time, we're begging people for the opportunity. We're trying to find clever ways to do it. But if you're scared of that, you're scared to kind of put yourself out there, scared of being told to go away. If you give up when people do tell you to go away, if you don't have that kind of staying power, then you're not in the right job. So I've had a kind of quite hybrid career. I spent my first 15 years in consumer goods marketing and general management, big corporate life, Danone and people like that. And then I founded a consulting company, which was sold to MSC Saatchi. And as a consulting company in the marketing space, you kind of have to have Unilever as a client. They're so big and they're such a valuable logo to have on your creds that you kind of have to do that. So we started talking to Unilever about how we could transform their thinking in brand development in 2001 when we founded. It took us till 2006, so I think it's 5 years to land the first Unilever project. But in all that time, we never gave up believing that it would be valuable for them and valuable for us to be doing major project work with that kind of customer. So, it's the same with the major retailers. You just have to kind of stick out there. The buyer might hate you. We've had some examples where the buyer just hated us and, just wouldn't even speak to us, let alone engage in any kind of conversation. Eventually the buyer leaves. The new buyer comes in and almost always wants to overthrow, some of the regime that he inherited. So But if you don't understand that and you don't have the staying power, then you kind of give up and you sort of walk away.
That is the resilience piece,
And
isn't it? Because buyers do change far too frequently. I don't think people quite realise
yeah,
how fast. Amazon, one week they'll be selling pet food. The next, I've had them turn up on, women's floral dresses. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, where does
yeah,
that come from? But you're right, they really want to put their footprint and their stamp on their portfolio of brands, don't they?
yeah. They do. So, in a way, it is a game of attrition. You need to be prepared to wait until they're worn down, not give up when you're worn down. And being an entrepreneur, you're kind of worn down a lot. But actually, if you think of each of those blows as being something that kind of can build your armor and something that can build your business, then a bit like the feedback, you kind of learn to take it as being par for the course. Boxers don't expect to win a fight without getting hit. So you sort of, if you're a boxer and you're worried about getting punched, you're probably not going to be a very good boxer. So I think the analogy works very well for being entrepreneurs. You're going to get punched. Someone's going to punch you in the face, and somebody else is going to take your wallet. That's what being an entrepreneur is about.
Some of these analogies are superb. I like the wetsuit one and this
They're
one.
brilliant.
These are two I'm going to reuse. But I'm keen to a game James and I tend to play with brands and owner founders is we talk about if you could pick one brand or one celebrity that really represents what your brand's all about, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh, that is really hard. A celebrity kind of represents the brand. I've never thought about it. I think it would be one of the more kind of cutting edge DJs. Somebody who's kind of uh, pushing against the kind of mainstream tide, but not in a sort of a nasty kind of aggressive, kind of gangster sort of way. I literally can't speak of an individual, but it's that kind of sense of being kind of lovable rebels, people who are definitely pushing against the tide and trying to change things, but actually kind of doing it in a way that they're doing it with a smile and a grin. I mean, we never read about our competitors; they're bloody amazing, incredible brands. So we kind of might sort of call them corporate bilgewater, but actually, we think they're bloody smart and we know they're cleverer than us and they know they've got more resources from us. So we're not arrogant and we're not nasty, but we are trying to reinvent the category.
So, in terms of what's next for Gunna Drinks, what's, without giving away trade secrets, obviously, but where are you going next? What's your kind of big, hairy, audacious goal? I suppose some people call it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about revenue growth. It's less about profit and more about being able to get to the type of revenues that Fever Tree got to, 14, 15 million. So that's our journey. In the past, we've sort of looked at it as a UK-based journey, which again was wrong. It was a mistake. At the start of lockdown, what we suddenly realized, actually, if you look at the upside of this terrible situation for us and for the people involved in it in any way, that actually what it was going to do is going to give us a load of thinking time that we never really had. So every single day of every single week, we were spending with customers and consumers in some way or other, whether it's chasing a customer or negotiating with a customer or discussing how to develop with it. Suddenly they're not there. So we've got a crap load of time and we can either put ourselves on furlough or we can use that time to really think about how we go to the next level. And one of the things we've realized is that we were ignoring the export opportunity. When we looked at our competitors or brands that had been around for a lot longer than us, they were selling like 50 or 60% of their revenue just in export. So we took the time to really focus on where we could build distribution outside of the UK. And we've already, in less than a year, signed 11 distribution agreements, including most recently the US. And we've got about another 30 export distribution agreements in the pipeline. So the way we're going to get to that sort of 15 million revenue kind of target is now going to be with a third of the revenue, possibly a lot more, coming from a channel export that we kind of weren't looking at because we were so focused on running around keeping up with the day-to-day UK opportunity. And then I think another third of it will probably come from the online business now. So I think we'll grow not just through a retail UK focus, but through a by building that, of course, because that is going to be a core of our business, but by adding on to that a very successful online business and a very successful export business.
Melvin, conscious of time, and I know how busy you are and kind of meetings you need to get to. So last thing from me is just some parting thoughts for those owner founders that have listened today, that have taken inspiration from your story, which I'm sure is many. What are the parting nuggets of wisdom you would leave with those people, for those that are going on a similar journey to yourself?
Yeah, I'd definitely say spend a lot more time on your weaknesses. Really worry about whether one of those is going to kill you, or leave you exposed, or whether one of those is a missed opportunity. In some cases, your weaknesses aren't weaknesses, actually just missed opportunities. I think, that's really, really important, just having that ability to look in the mirror and to see the bits that you like, but also the bits that you don't like. I think that's really, really important. I think build your resilience. Okay, so let's say you're not resilient. Resilience is something you can learn, no question at all. You can learn to be more resilient. I had this conversation with my partner this morning about how different I am just 5 or 10 years later. I was kind of sensitive and sort of, offended and worried about stuff most of the time. Now I can take some pretty hard punches. Some really tough stuff is happening all the time. And you know what? It's kind of like, it's just sort of how it is. And you sort of just have to accept that someone's going to try and sue you, or, someone's going to try and take your business. All of these things are going to happen. And actually how you respond and how you build resilience from the experience is really, really important to the way that you move forward, and the way that you kind of, learn from it. And I guess the third thing I would basically say is, think more about your channels. We were massively over obsessed by retail grocery. So like a really very, very narrowly focused route to market opportunity. When we open that up to see the different types of retail that are out there, food, hospitality, pubs, when we open it up to different countries, and when we open it up to online versus direct to consumer, online versus retail wholesale, we're suddenly focused with not 500,000 ways of going to market, but probably like 3 million ways of going to market. And that any one of those different channels could be the one that transforms you. We could end up being an averagely good, averagely successful UK business with a massively, massively successful export business. We could end up being the best online soft drinks retailer. All of those things are possible, but only if we open up our minds and think about the other ways of going to market that are out there.
Well, Melvin, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, and it's been a fantastic. And as always with these series of brand designs, the founders and co-founders are always so open and honest with their responses. So we really, really appreciate that. So for anyone listening or watching today, please do visit gunnadrinks.com, Gunna drinks.com, and pick yourself up a full Monty taster case. I can safely say there'll be one of those heading towards our agency offices fairly soon, I think. So Melvin, thank you so much. We'll keep an eye on your journey, and hopefully at some point we'll get you back in and kind of discuss a little bit around some of the journey that you've kind of reached, maybe in another 6 or 12 months' time. That would be amazing.
Thank you. And I love what you're doing, and it is genuinely one of the more valuable initiatives that's kind of out there. So, well done, and keep doing it.
Well, thank you so much indeed. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll speak very soon. Thanks again, Melvin.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks very much. So, guys, thank you very much indeed. That was Melvin from Gunna Drinks, and from Nathan and myself. Thanks again for joining us for Brand Designs, and we'll be back next week with yet another session and yet another inspirational founder. So, speak to you very soon.
Thanks again.